Welcome back to the BDTV Breakfast Show. Let's see what we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. My name is Elizabeth Musa, and I've got here in the studio with me Mr. Mohammed Akonchi, our in-house analyst. They will be joining me to review some of the big stories making the rounds on the front pages today. How are you today, Mr. Mohammed?
Oh, very well. Good morning. And how was the night?
It was fine.
Well
How
done.
are
It's night. So it's my pleasure being here again.
Always
And
a
I'm sure
delight.
Trump, with his shenanigans, I think you heard what he said he came up with again, that we can be able to get American visa by buying American gold card for $5 million.
$5 million.
With some of these very funny policies he's talking about. And I was looking at the kind of money, but we are talking about, $5 million will be, let's just be able to have an idea of how many billionaires, how many of these millionaires in dollars that we have in the world. And then somebody was actually saying they are just about, what I read that on Twitter this morning, they are about 2,000 millionaires. I mean, apart in the list of the Forbes millionaires in dollars, there are only about 2,000 of them that are actually out of US. So if he's trying to be able to raise the $50 million, to be able to clear up the debt, even selling that gold card may not actually be enough in terms of non-Americans. We're talking about a larger chunk of them are even Chinese, who may not have any interest in getting American citizenship. But I don't know, the advisors, of course, it's maybe the advisor is Elon Musk who's advising him, some of these heart of brain tingling thoughts that just always able to come to their mind every now and then. I mean, and then the mails they said was actually sent to that every federal worker by Monday should explain what they actually did last week,
the week before.
And then, just coming up with jangling reforms and calling people to account. We're talking about an Elon Musk who is just a special advisor, who is not a federal appointed minister or secretary, as they call them. So a special advisor now ordering public servants, a private citizen, urging public servants to be able to, be given account of what they did. In fact, I heard that the head of the FBI actually asked the staff working for the FBI to disregard the mail, even though some other government establishments ask their people to respond. But the way things are just going, it's just really taking unprecedented dimensions.
It's almost like every morning you just expect the unexpected. The same way we just saw the $5 million gold card
that I wanted to sell. I mean,
it's every day.
I was just looking at that this morning. I woke up and I looked at that. I've not read it in details, but I was just like, what is this man coming up with again? And then, but it's always like that anyway.
That was very interesting. Let's just keep expecting new things every day with President Donald Trump. Well, let's see what we have on the Business Day paper this morning. We start off with the Business Day paper this morning. And the big story on the Business Day paper says, inside Nigeria's controversial drug market raid. This is more like an expose. And then economic reforms pay off with strongest growth since 2021. Economic reforms paying off with the strongest growth since 2021. Then on page 30 of the Business Day paper, it says OMO sales rise 18 times as CBN tightens news on inflation, and tax reforms reps pledge transparent laws as opposition grows. I mean, let's start off with that of economic reforms paying off with the strongest growth since 2021.
I think it's been quite recurring these days. We kept hearing. In fact, the government is actually basking in that euphoria. The GDP growth figures that was actually released 2 days ago on the back of the rebasing, the inflation that actually be able to trend downward. The reforms are started picking up, and President Tinubu, in fact, at the APC caucus 2 days ago and the APC NEC meeting yesterday, kept reeling out those things that the gloomy days are over and the sunny days, or the sun is actually rising when it comes to Nigeria's economic fortune. And so maybe some of those dimensions actually be able to point, some of the economic indices, the fundamentals are pointing in that direction. Exchange rate stability, the Naira has actually be able to gain quite a strength. In fact, the explanation for Dangote's price slash that happened yesterday was as a result of the stability of the Naira. The Naira has actually been able to gain quite considerable strength, against the dollars. And that has actually been able to make naira a bit defense based against the dollars. So that allowed Dangote and most of the other local producers to be able to have access to dollars very cheaply relative to the way it was before now. So inflation too, we've seen that, even though they're still back and forth on that. People are still really arguing as to whether that is the reality. But yesterday, I think we spoke about the food prices that are dropping. And it's actually across board, just the price of tomato, the price of rice, at least I'm quite evident on that. The price of fuel as well. This is the second time this year. I think we're going to talk about that. The first was in January when, it reduced the price initially by about 25 and now by about 65 naira again, and that is actually be able to move across board, from the ex-depot to what happens at the filling stations. So most of these reforms, we've started seeing them coming, yielding that dividend. But maybe it has not really gotten to the level that we want it to be, perhaps, because you still, Nigerians are still saying that the trickling down effect, the transformative effect of that thing on their lives, they've not really seen it. And that is where the government, the policymakers, the ministries, the permanent and government agencies needed to do more to ensure that these touch based on the people's welfare. These actually has an impact as much as possible on people's welfare. So we're looking at that, and then the most of the analysts have actually predicted that maybe because of the base effect, 2025 will be a year that will turn the corner. Most of all those economic challenges, the economic debacles that we have last year will likely be able to ease off, this year, and then some of those things are actually becoming quite evident.
And there are some speculations that I just want to hear your thought. These are just speculation. Some people have been speculating. I was somewhere yesterday and they were talking about the fact that this, how we've been talking about the stability of the naira to an extent now. So some people have been saying that this stability thing that we're talking about is not something for us to. It's not something for us to
be happy about,
be excited about. Yeah, that the kind of inflation, the kind of turnaround that we're about to see soon, in terms of how the rate will go up, it will go up, that we don't. It's going to be very unexpected. And again, these are just speculation.
Of course.
So some people are saying that that there's a lot of there's a
defense.
lot of, there are lots of things going on behind the scenes.
Of course. Okay.
Maybe politicians like printing the naira, probably
to defend.
They are right now. Right now it's with the dollar rate and with the dollar rate going down and the naira. So many of these people are buying
these dollars
and
stockpiling it.
They're stockpiling it. That before in the next 2 months it's going to go up back, and then they will now bring it back and start selling them.
Okay.
So they're just saying that, look, all of these things that we're doing is
actually temporary adjustments.
It's some gimmick that is going on in the upper echelon.
Yes, okay.
So to speak.
Because what I'm saying here is we've maybe this is actually the very, very first time where we've seen like about 60-day consistent strengthening of the naira against the dollar, which in the last 2 years of this administration, that has not been the case. And then most of the analysts have actually been able to pin the effect of that on the new platform that was actually introduced by the central bank, which tend to be able to bring in transparency. And
what's the name of that platform?
That's EFEM, the electronic foreign exchange market. So that allows is a willing buyer, willing seller kind of arrangement where things are actually done. Not really the behind the scene kind of a thing you're talking about, because that enshrines some level of transparency and some level of openness in what goes on in the market. So you can't be able to roll out some of all these other speculations, some of these other conspiracy theory as well.
Obviously,
as to what people you can't be able to roll them out. But if you look at that platform, if you've seen the way it was actually launched in December, and that have actually been responsible. In fact, the central bank has credited that platform to allow them to be able to monitor the flows, the inflows and the outflows of the dollars, and the exchange of the naira against the dollar in a more transparent manner. And they do that on a daily basis. You see, they'll be able to release their account as to the amount of transactions that have taken place in the day. So the black markets could also be there, behind the camera kind of transactions or some people. It's also very evident. That could also be. But evidently, the only other thing I could see, that in addition to the AFM, is that the central bank has been defending, because I think one of the papers this morning did an expose on that, about how the foreign exchange has been depleted, in terms of showing those dollars in the market. And that is where we'll not be able to roll out what we're saying, that it has actually been able to decline by about $2.2 billion. Our the foreign reserves, the foreign reserves. So what the foreign reserves is like a reserve. Whenever the naira goes below a particular threshold against the dollar, the central bank is actually allowed by law to dip its hand into the reserve to defend the naira, so as to be able to give it that fighting chance, as we always be able to call it. So we know. So yesterday, now, if you listen to the APC at the NEC meeting, their NEC meeting, maybe we'll talk about that in Punch. That is most of what the other papers, will release this morning. When the chairman of the progressive governor spoke, the governor of Imo State, Opuzodinma, one of the highlights that really, really struck me was the fact they said, that since the emergence of this administration, the allocations to the state has increased by more than threefolds. That at least the least state now is he was even talking about 2 trillion naira in terms of what they get. And then that the money is, and every 6 months, the federal government is always increasing allocation. So what that goes to the national, to the state, and the local government. But what most of these governors will do with that is the question. Is that when they get this allocation, some of them often use to convert them, which is the allocation, the concern you're talking about. When they get the allocations in that way, they convert it to dollars and then keep it for one other purpose or the other. It was quite very prevalent during Muhammadu Buhari's administration. We see quite a whole lot of that coming, into limelight every now and then. So that's why we will not be able to roll out this, because since allocation, ever since the removal of the subsidy, allocations to them have gone up. So what would they do with that? Maybe most of them just be able to pay salaries and then do some other things. The rest, what do they do with it? Do they convert it into dollars and then keep it and speculate on it, and then waiting for when the dollar will rise again? Over this week, the dollar never depreciated. I think on Tuesday they picked up again, like about in fact the parallel market now is about 1,490. While the official market is about 1,405 naira or thereabout. So we've seen that downward trend. The weight is actually coming down, but most of these governors or politicians, as you say, who tend to be able to have access to the tilt, when they get the allocations, some of them used to be able to do this, convert them to dollars, speculating on it, and then waiting on the time when it picks up again, and then they tend to bring it out. Some of them are always doing that. So
absolutely.
That's another thing that we need to be very careful of.
Yeah, I think those are the theories.
The central bank needed to check.
Mr. Mohammed, we actually have to just move to the next paper right now. Let's see what we have on the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch newspaper says, election cases, APC accounts seized, over 8.9 billion debt, says Ganduje. Party incurs legal fees, others from presidential, governorship, and legislative election cases. Then upwards on the top left-hand side says, importers fret as Dangote lowers petrol price again. Isn't this nice? Then $1.9 billion naira fraud. Ex-accountants seeks out of court settlement. Again, then concerns as forex reserves drop to $2.3 billion amid naira gains. Interesting. Then down below it says Pro-Obasa collect barred from assembly, threatens contempt suit. And then on page 18 it says immigration arrests 378 illegal immigrants in Ogun. USAID donated drugs found in Lagos and Abia markets. Interesting. Wow. I think I would like us to talk firstly on this election case and come down to this USAID donated drugs found in Lagos.
I think it's just a fallout of the APC NEC meeting yesterday, just like what I think we mentioned. The Ganduje is the national chairman of the party. And maybe the two key highlights of what happened there was a vote of confidence the party passed on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in terms of no vacancy in Aso Rock again. That means when that did hear yesterday, but it is the meeting of the APC is talking to themselves, and you see them saying there's no vacancy there. But the second one he mentioned was the governor, the chairman himself, when he came out to say the party is in debt, and the debt is to the tune of about 8.9 billion. You know, which majorly incurred. You know, they are actually owed to lawyers, owed to legal counsels. You know, over fallout in presidential, governorship, electoral issues that they have in courts, and in fact, there's a garnishee order from the bank. In fact, the banks has put a garnishee order on. The garnishee order means a kind of an order where no transaction should occur on that account because of debt you are owed. So it mentioned like about 5 or 6 banks where a garnishee order has actually been passed, had been imposed on their account, where no transaction can take place, you understand, because of the debt owed to lawyers who have actually rendered services. And in fact, it was even begging the president yesterday. You know, it was begging the governors, first of all, to ensure that they make their contributions to the pulse of the party, and then also begging the president as well to be able to give them a land, you know, to build a befitting secretariat that will belong to the party. But that was some of the key highlights of the event yesterday at the APC NEC. But maybe amongst most of the disorganizations that we've seen across party ranks in Nigeria, maybe they tend to be able to exhibit some element of organization. What they did yesterday, perhaps with that. But with that debt, but they're not the only one. Because remember, there's no way, if you any case against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for example, will have as a respondent in the case. I mean, to be joined in the suit will also be included with APC will also be included as a party. And then to prosecute some of these cases, you understand, it's always be able to give them a lot of challenge. The second thing there is about the importers that are fretting over Dangote's reduction. I think that vendor did here yesterday, and I know what you just mentioned now. Is that not a good thing? Maybe the importers, in fact, the Ip man have been complaining since yesterday that these are taken by Dangote, because he mentioned there who is in the spirit of Ramadan. It's just like they did during Christmas period. But the Ip man said no. There is actually an act of economic sabotage. It's to be able to push them out of the market.
To monopolize the market.
Monopolize the market. That's what they are saying. No, but another angle to it would be like, this is the essence of competition. It is simply about competition. So most of them are importing. Some of them, remember NMDPRA last week told us that 50% of local consumption, I mean, local production can only be 50%. The remaining 50% are from import. Before Dangote came with the Zambian energy minister on money to say, no, they have the capability to meet up the bets. We still know that 50% of fuel are still being imported into the country. So with that in mind, as of last week, the landing cost of petrol is 970 naira. Landing cost. I've not looked at all of this. That's at the end of last week. So meaning that for slashing the price to 860 naira, that is a loss already for those that are importing. That's ex-depot. I mean, in fact, it's 825 if you are going to go and buy it in Lekki, Beju-Lekki over there. So they'll buy it at Aidin, at Dover filling station, at MRS. They will buy it for 825, and then they are selling for 860. I mean, they'll sell at the pumps at 860, but they're buying for 825. I mean, I saw MRS this morning.
So that's about 25, 30 naira?
825 to 860. That's about 35 naira or thereabout. Gain for them. But you know, look at where he's actually slashing it from. So it's about 65 naira slash. It was selling for 925 naira before, so he reduced it 945 or thereabout before he slashed it to 825 for them now. So they can now sell at the rate of 860 naira to buyers. And MRS has started. It takes effect from this morning, and they've started. In fact, I saw one this morning when I was coming. They've not started selling.
They've changed the pump price.
They've changed the pump price at on the dashboard to 825. And the queue was quite long. I saw one around this around our Lekki Kati axis, the MRS that is there. They've adjusted their price. So, but the importers are fretting. You know, they're the one complaining about this. There's an act of economic sabotage. It's just to be able to monopolize the market and push them out of that. Whether that is still the case, we would likely say, because at the rate at which they are producing now, we know that demanders, buyers, will definitely go to places where they can buy it cheaper. So it's
so far you're giving the same quality.
The same quality, and it's from Dangote. So the question we'll be asking them is, why can't you buy? Why do you have to import? Why can't you go and buy from him? You know, that's the question. Why do you still have to be able to? It's more like being stubborn and adamant to say, we just want to be able to go and import it. Why can't you just go there and buy? So maybe that could be another strategy on his own part as well to ensure, okay, but time, it's a serious competition, it's a serious competition in that regard.
I actually I like competition like this. But very quickly, let me hear your thoughts. We will need to go pretty soon, but let me hear your thoughts on concerns as forex reserves dropping to $2.3 billion.
Drop by? Is it drop to?
Drop $2.3 billion amid the Naira gains.
I think we spoke about that not just a few minutes ago about some of the reforms. That concern has been there because that's what people are saying. You know, the other thing you mentioned about speculators saying, politicians are, stashing this money somewhere. The dollars. So one of the arguments there has been that the CBN has been defending the Naira. That most of the gains we've been seeing is not that the Naira is not what can you call it? It's not that the Naira is actually fighting naturally. Maybe gaining the strength naturally, but that what is actually causing it is more or less like a defense from the central bank. And the central bank can defend it through the foreign reserve. The central bank and the Ministry of Finance jointly, you understand, tend to be able to defend the Naira through that. So there was that concern, when we were able to check Ministry of Finance account yesterday to show that the Naira, the foreign reserve has dropped from the 44 billion to about $41 billion. So that concern has been there. That could that have been the reason why the Naira has actually been gaining strength? That was actually a concern. In fact, one of the reports there shows that most of the foreign exchange backlogs that the central bank settled recently was actually as a result of that. So Mr. Iwani, for example, said that CBN has spent about $9 billion in the last 2 months since that FM started. Dr. Bismarck Iwani was one that mentioned that the CBN has actually spent about $8.8 billion to defend the Naira since the 2nd of December. And I'm sure he's an insider, so he has some inside information as to how that has actually been the case. But whether that is still it, the Naira now is trading at about 1,490, 1,480. And then, in fact, it's even open at 1,481 this morning. So those things that we've seen from that high of about 1,600 and then to trend downward, a lot of concerns have been that the CBN has been the one defending it rather than, allowing the steady state or the natural Naira, the Naira itself defending itself by its own strength. That has been the concern. But if that is the case, then we needed to be able to, that will naturally be, that is not considered sustainable. That's the question. It's not sustainable to keep doing that because to what level will you go to? If you be able to deplete the reserves, what now happen?
Right. Well, I mean, fingers crossed on that. Let's see what we have on the cartoon of the day for today very quickly. The cartoon of the day is always like a very good way for us to end the show. So you see a man, this seems like someone in shackles.
That's a Nigeria
itself. He has a Nigeria vest.
That's a Nigeria.
So that's Nigeria.
Carrying all those bodies.
So it seems like Nigeria is in shackles.
It's in shackles.
And then you're seeing that the shackles have like the bag, the baggage. The shackles have lawlessness, insecurity, inflation, corruption and debt, and then struggling to just move. They're struggling to move, and
that is quite. So you can see how skinny and skeletal the nation has been, and then that skinny and skeletal man carrying these
all of these
baggages,
this baggage with shackles tied to his neck,
tied to them, and trying to be able to move. And then that is just an emblematic. That is just symptomatic, symbolic of exactly what the challenges that the nation is actually battling.
And I hope we break free very soon. When you say things like this, it might seem like a wild dream,
to break out from.
Yes, if you say things like this, because look at how heavy. Like it's going to be hard to actually break off from all of this. Like it takes like a very strong man. So we don't know what that strong man will be for Nigeria, but we do hope that we do hope that our gloomy days are over, and just as the president said, we have our better days ahead very soon, and we'll break from the shackles, and we'll not have to, see cartoons like this. We just see Nigeria as a very robust man sitting on a throne.
And saying, giving out all those goodies to the people.
Anything can happen. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for your time on the morning show this morning. Up next, we'll be having a big story. Do stay with us.